Kirigaya Kazuto, although more belovedly known as Kirito from Sword Art Online, is a teenage boy of many talents. Primarily, he's known for his two-weapon sword style, allowing an absolutely ridiculous DPS output in the series, and is a smart cookie being able to make drones for his little cyber daughter to inhabit. Although, he's also shown to be abnormally tanky and apparently an expert in hand-to-hand combat and fishing and max stealth, and why does he have nearly maxed out healing? What is this? This isn't even getting into all the different versions of the boy from, say, Gun Gale, Fairy Dance, and so on, so honestly, is it even possible to build Kirito as a viable D&D character? Yes. In the Unearthed Arcana, so it's a yes beyond the main rulebooks, but it's still Wizards of the Coast official content. We have the Way of Tranquility Monk.
Embrace tranquility.
Monks are already a solid class for multi-weapon fighters, so long as you're using monk weapons anyway, which technically short swords already are. By default, they also are able to swap out dexterity in favor of strength for their attack bonuses, since our sword boy hasn't exactly been hitting the gym lately. So out of the gate, our monk Kirito is able to slice and dice without a care in the world, taking bonus actions to get extra hits with the standard martial arts ability, and even more with Flurry of Blows at level 2. Also, martial arts, he doesn't even need to be armed, so we can check off his Kung Fu Excellency box. First is the Unarmored Defense, which uses Wisdom instead of actual armor for a surprisingly high AC out of the gate. Because, let's be honest, Kirito's Cloak of Gucci Midnight wouldn't exactly protect much in real life. Secondly are several of the defensive features like Evasion, Stillness of Mind, Deflect Missiles, and Slowfall. All of these and more in the Monk class allow for expanding the usage of saving throws, completely negating several conditions like being charmed, or avoiding other weird sources of damage like falling to one's death. Finally, monks get a lot of bonus movement through their level ups, all the way up to double what they originally started as with 60 feet of movement per turn. And they are eventually able to run up friggin' walls with unarmored movement, so while our Kirito build may not get perfect flight like he had in ALO, we can definitely get pretty darn close with key-empowered disengage, running up walls, and slowfall. It's less like flying and more like Golden Age Superman's jumping, or hammer propulsion! Honestly, it's all the same. Now, why Way of Tranquility specifically? Frankly, because it's the only monk archetype that lets them heal in any manner, very similar to a paladin's Lay on Hands. Later abilities are a bit extra with this archetype, such as gaining proficiency in Persuasion, advantages in dealing with angry people, and getting revenge damage when someone is killed. The rest of the archetype isn't necessary, but certainly isn't against the character concept of Kirito in any way, and we get the healing, which is really why we're here. But there is one glaring problem, which is that even a maxed out monk, we are only getting 4 attacks per turn. 2 normal hits and 2 from the Flurry of Blows. That is nowhere near the 21 hits of murder. And frankly, the monk capstone of getting 4 key points for free at every combat is a bit unnecessary. This is why I highly recommend, at minimum, multiclassing into fighter for 2 levels to get Action Surge, which effectively lets you get a whole extra turn to dish out more pain. Okay, so maybe 8 hits is still a long way from 21, but that's the best we got right now, okay? While the fighter combat styles are almost totally useless for this build since Kirito doesn't use shields, he doesn't typically fight with a single blade or ranged weapon, and certainly doesn't use great weapons, and we already have dual weapon bonuses thanks to martial arts from the monk. We do, however, get an extra heal with Second Wind, bonus skills including an all too important constitution save, and proficiency with pretty much every weapon in the game to allow our boy to get a pistol or use a great weapon if the 1d10 points of monk pain weren't enough. For this reason, when you do pick a fighter style, I do highly recommend archery or even great weapon, just to get a bit of variety into your build yet staying in character. Dualist is, however, the most in-character option for a Kirito build, but is frankly a needless self-restraint since as long as you have a friggin' body as a monk, you're always considered armed. There's never a need for you to not fight with multiple weapons if you have the choice to, unless you're using a non-monk item like arrows or anime swords. Moving on to feats, there's only 2 which I feel are absolutely necessary to finish off the character, and 3 that are appropriate, but if you really don't want them, it's not a big deal. The first mandatory one is Magic Initiate, which lets you take 3 spells of any caster class, these being 2 cantrips and a single level 1 spell. The only choice you have in this is Wizard, since that can get you Summon Familiar with your level 1 and get your adorable little spy drone camera daughter, or at least roleplay having one in game. The 2 cantrips would be Prestidigitation and Message to really simulate the feel that you are, like the literal Kirito, a video game character. You would play with the spell Message to PM other entities, and generally invoke video gamey effects like hacking the asset files of the game that you're in to say, making a tree look like a stone pillar as one example, or just other little fourth wall breaking jokes that help flesh out the feel that we're going for, again, that you're this video game character. Second is Blade Mastery, another Unearthed Arcana bit that gives an extra point to hit for using swords. Advantage on attacks where you would be able to qualify for attacks of opportunity, or AOOs for short, and a reaction of parry, which lets you increase your AC by 1 if you want to go on the defensive, but not have to waste a key point spending it to dodge. Kirito is a sword master after all. This is pretty much mandatory for him and is the reason why you're not just going for your typical kung fu fist build. The extra feats, I feel, are Dual Wielder, Tough, and Skulker, although sometimes Skulker can be called Stealthy in other entries. Yeah, you would think Dual Wielder would be mandatory, except that martial arts, yet again, covers almost everything that we need here. You are already always armed, and you are already getting an attack bonus to both of your weapons. The only reason to get this ability is for the extra point of AC because you have those 2 weapons. Honestly, you'd only get this for flavor, as this is a feat better spent elsewhere. Tough gives you 2 points of health per level that you have, so you're a bit tankier. And lastly, Skulker to max out that stealth skill Kirito apparently has. Again, none of these are necessary since they're not exactly what the character is known for and don't contribute that much to our build, but hey, it's appropriate, and it's there if you find a single stat point too boring of an alternative. Now, what about our details? Well, Kirito tends to be pretty vanilla of a person and does need 2 feats, so Variant Human would fit perfectly in the bill, and lets you take Perception as a skill since he's no idiot. Although canonically I guess you could go for an elf thanks to ALO if you really wanted to. As for backgrounds, I actually think Wanderer from the Player's Handbook actually works perfectly fine here. You get Athletics and Survival, the latter being, extensive knowledge of the world he lives in, kinda like being a beta tester. This is compounded with the abilities of vaguely knowing the environment and settlements in an area, as well as being able to reasonably feed 5 people a day just based on the environment. Just like how in the show he can literally sit down and say, wait a minute, I've been here before and I know what to do next. The items aren't a big enough deal though. You get a guitar, 10 gold, a staff. If anything, I would try to haggle your DM for an extra short sword instead of the staff, and maybe a gaming set instead of the musical instrument for more appropriate flavor. Now onto the specifics of the class itself. You'll be choosing a short sword, and the 2 skills you want proficiency in would be Acrobatics and Stealth to compound off of all the decks you'll be stacking, and again, a maxed out Stealth stat. When you go for Fighter and gain the bonus skills for that, pick up History to represent further knowledge of the game, and Insight to represent how Kirito begins to open up out of his shell and learn to interact with other people better. Finally, your stat line. Assuming a 27 point buy system where you start at with 8s across the board, your final stats would be 15 in Dexterity and Wisdom, since Monk scales incredibly well on those, and an 11 points in Constitution for an HP bonus. Everything else will set at 10s, since Kirito isn't exactly awful in any particular thing, and, jokes about being a harem magnet aside, isn't the greatest speaker. I suppose you can warrant keeping strength even lower while upping intelligence, but frankly intelligence isn't used anywhere in this build aside from the history skill, so while appropriate, it just isn't really needed here. Your extra stat point for being a variant human will be put into dexterity since that is our most important stat for this build. At a minimum, though, if you feel like you must play with these stats, keep Dex and Wisdom at 13. That way you can multi-class into Fighter and pick up Magic Initiate. Both of these are still very important here to get the build fully fleshed out. Now, before sending you off, there is the prickly problem of when to multi-class into Fighter. With Monks, I find there to be 3 inflection points, level 3, 7, and 11. At 3 you get your Monk healing and most of the core features of the class. Level 7, you get the beloved Evasion Defense ability, and finally at 11 you get your total freedom of movement, and everything after that just becomes more about being tanky. To get the most out of the build, I honestly would go with picking your fighter levels after 3. And lastly, how many levels of fighter? Yes, we get Action Surge at level 2, but at level 3 you can gain the Champion archetype and have your swords crit a whopping 10% of the time instead of just 5, so you should consistently start to outdamage most of the party. You'll be giving up 5 feet of movement to do this, and the ability to astral project or turn invisible. But honestly, I think it's worthwhile to take one extra level of fighter. I don't see Kirito as a new age religious. And that's it! Now you're ready to play as the most famous Isekai boy and break every fourth wall in all of your 5e games. To the DMs out there, I am so sorry. Example character sheets can be downloaded from the link below.
Did you play? Did you die? Would you take this character for a ride? Please like, comment, and subscribe for more. Have a good one.